And we're considering these days as being days of sorrow is because of that as well. Despite, he saw himself to be better than the daughter of Fatima. He said, I don't care if she's in the house, I'm going to burn it down. Was it not his words? He said, Fatima is in the house. What in? I don't care. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين ثم الصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين حبيب قلوبنا وشفيع ذنوبنا وطبيب نفوسنا أبي القاسم المصطفى محمد اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد وعلى أهل بيت الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين سيما الحجة بقية الله الأعظم روحي وأرواحنا له فداء ولعن دائم على أعدائهم أجمعين إلى قيام يوم الدين. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقهوا قولي. So for 2 nights we have spoken about why it's important for us to discover our hidden illnesses, and how hidden illnesses becomes more destructive and more powerful if we don't discover them and combat them. And we made it quite clear that hidden illnesses exist within deep layers of our soul. Therefore, it's important for us that we put some effort to it. We embrace the hardships that we face in life, make sure that we utilize all the different hardships, the difficulties and the calamities that we face in life in order for us to seek closer to Allah. So we utilize it in our own benefit in order for us to discover the different hidden illnesses we carry around, or that which resides within our heart. Today I would like to mention one hidden illness which is considered to be the worst type of hidden illnesses. The worst type. If you look at the narrations we have from Ahlul Bayt, if you look at the ayat of the Holy Quran, there's no hidden illness worse than this one. And nobody can claim they're exempted. It's such a bad one, then unfortunately, because we don't understand the root cause of this illness, spiritual illness, we see a lot of people that don't even consider themselves to be in the danger zone of being affected by such a spiritual illness. And that itself is a symptom that we carry around this spiritual illness, that we don't consider ourselves to be affected by it. And what is that? It is one of the most destructive ones. But the fact that it's hidden makes it even worse, because then we think, no, I don't have this illness, and therefore, I'm not in danger to be affected by it. That itself is a symptom. The fact that we don't think that we are affected by this spiritual illness is in itself a symptom that we have some issues with this spiritual illness. What kind of spiritual illness is it? Amir al-Mu'mineen, he states in a beautiful narration, Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. He states, إِيَّاكَ وَالْكِبْرِ, beware of arrogance. فَإِنَّهُ أَعْدَمُ الذُّنُوبِ وَالْأَعْلَمُ الْعُيُوبِ وَحِلْيَةَ إِبْلِيسِ. It is the greatest of all sins, kibr, takabbur, arrogance. It is the greatest of all sins, and is the most disgraceful of all faults, and it's the ornament of Iblis. Why Amir al-Mu'mineen alayhi salam, he defines it as being the ornament of Iblis, inshallah, tomorrow. But understand, it is the greatest of all sins. And takabbur and arrogance, or arrogance, comes in different levels as well. Comes in different levels. Some people, they think, okay, I don't have this issue. Why? I'm not denying the truth. Yes, one category of arrogance, or one level of arrogance, is that you deny the truth. You consider yourself to be so great that despite anybody telling you the truth, or even if they tell you a truth which is clear as day, you don't accept it. That kind of arrogance that we see mentioned in the Holy Quran in numerous verses, where you had individual وَاسْتَكْبَرَ وَكَانَ مِنَ الْكَافِرِينَ, which is mentioned about Iblis. Was it because Iblis didn't believe in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? No, he accepted the fact that Allah, He exists. Why and how do we know that? Because he said, you created me from fire, therefore I'm better than Adam. In that he acknowledges 2 things: that Allah, He exists. Second, that Allah is his creator. So he affirmed the attributions of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Not that he denied them or but still he's defined as a disbeliever in the Holy Quran. A kafir. وَاسْتَكْبَرَ وَكَانَ مِنَ الْكَافِرِينَ. Why? Because of his arrogance. Because of his arrogance. That's one level of arrogance. Then you have another level of arrogance that is sometimes, no, we just feel better than other individuals. Simple. Because of small things. Because of superficial things, we consider ourselves to be better than other individuals. So arrogance is something which is so dangerous. Why? Because every human being are affected by it somehow. Or the fact that we don't think that we're affected by it, that itself is a symptom. That just shows how hidden this spiritual illness is. How hidden it is. Why we have to put an effort to find out where exactly is it hidden in our souls, and then we have to combat it. You see, because arrogance in itself, or the root cause of arrogance, is not necessarily a bad thing. It's something which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He created within our fitrah that makes our fitrah seek towards personal growth. Why? Because we seek greatness as human beings, and that's not a bad thing. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He created us with a fitrah, a human nature where we seek greatness. And that's a positive thing, that's not a bad thing. But the issue starts where we immaturely assume that, look, we have achieved greatness, or sometimes no, it's not because of that. It's because we do it through the improper means. In other words, we consider something to be a mean for us to achieve greatness while it's not. Just like a person who tries to quench his thirst, but he does it through poison or something which is intoxicating. He's hurting himself. But does that mean that the need he had for quenching his thirst was a bad one or a negative one? Of course not. The need is something Allah He created him with. The need is a positive one. It's why it's for his own survival. It's a positive thing that he has that need. But it depends on how you quench your thirst. Whether you do it through pure water or you do it through something which is toxic. That's the difference. So the search for greatness resides within every human being, and it's not necessarily a bad thing. Why? Because that is exactly what motivates us to develop as human beings, to grow as human beings, and that's a positive thing. The issue starts when we seek improper means or prematurely think that we have achieved greatness. Now I'm a great person. Not understanding that, look, if you want to achieve greatness, it's a process that happens gradually. You're not going to be great overnight. We don't have such thing. Except if it was a blessing from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that He blesses certain servants with, yes, of course. But then again, it's a blessing from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But it's a gradual thing. One of the wisdoms behind Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentioned in the Holy Quran, He mentions that, look, even I, as your creator, I created this world, fi sittati ayyam. He mentions like it happens gradually. It's to tell us, look, if you want to achieve something, make sure that you follow the steps. It's a gradual process. Don't hurry up. Don't assume that you achieve greatness just by the fact that you achieve something in this worldly life. Why? Because you'll find other individuals that achieve much more than you from a worldly perspective. Yeah? But they're still arrogant individuals. They're still drowned in this spiritual illness. So if we attempt to achieve greatness through improper means, we would be deviated. And that's why we also see children, how they express this need. When they start wearing the shoes of the elders, right? When they start wearing the clothes of the elders, it's a sweet thing when children does it. Why? Because it just shows that they try to satisfy a need for achieving greatness, and that's a positive thing. It's sweet when it happens to children, but when adults do it, when grown-ups do it, then it becomes very dangerous. Then it's not sweet anymore. Why? Because they are claiming something which is not theirs. They're claiming a mean to seek greatness, which is not a mean to seek greatness, basically. It would deviate them. That's why the narration states, احذر الكبر, beware of arrogance, فإنه رأس الطغيان. It is the root of rebellion, ومعصية الرحمن, and disobedient to the most merciful. It's the root of rebellion and disobedience to the most merciful. Root cause. In another narration, أقبح الخلق الكبر. أقبح الخلق التكبر. The worst type, the most disgraceful type or trait, personal trait is what? Takabbur, arrogance. If we're not aware of this spiritual illness, respected brothers and sisters, unfortunately sometimes it grows so strong within the human soul that we gonna grow or think, as wrongfully assume that we achieve some sort of a greatness, and we be like Pharaoh. You think that Pharaoh, he just became Pharaoh overnight. In the beginning he just claimed that he's an authority, but suddenly he told his people, Ana Rabbuka al-A'la, I'm your most superior Lord. Then he started associating himself as a partner with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He considered himself to be a partner to Allah. He said, no, I'm even above Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Was it because he sought greatness through improper means, basically? He thought his authority as a human being is a mean for him to achieve greatness. So he wanted greatness just like every other human being, which is a positive thing, but he quenched his thirst with poison. And suddenly start to associate himself as being a partner with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, unfortunately. So given the fact that we essentially aren't bad human beings, why is this hidden disease or illness constantly with us? The seed is something which is planted by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in our fitrah. Because if you water this seed in the right way or the right way, you know what happens? Then you will search for absolute greatness through proper means to achieve greatness. And you're not going to be satisfied with anything but the source of greatness, which is no other than Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He placed this seed, He planted this seed within our fitrah. So we can search towards perfection. So we can strive towards perfection. So we can strive towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Because He's absolute greatness. He's the source of all greatness in this worldly life. And that is the only true mean or cause for us achieving greatness in this worldly life. Any other mean that you can think of would lead to deviation. In other words, takabbur. And we're going to mention some of the causes to it. But it's important to understand that if we don't nurture these virtues within our soul and make sure we choose the right and the proper means to satisfy our needs as human beings, our needs will be corrupted. Our needs will be corrupted. Listen to the narration from Amir al-Mu'mineen. He said, akrih nafsaka ala al-fada'il. Compel your soul toward virtues. Why? فَإِنَّ رَضَائِلَ أَنْتَ مَدْبُوءٌ عَلَيْهَا. Because when it comes to vices, you're naturally inclined toward them. You're naturally inclined toward them. Food, is food a bad thing? No, of course not. Food is that what we eat. So we benefit from its nutrition. But if food is left outside, what happens to it? It becomes corrupted. If we don't put in an effort and strive toward virtues and put in an effort to combat the spiritual illnesses, we're going to get corrupted as well. All the needs we have as a human being becomes corrupted as well. Why we should strive towards seeking greatness through its proper means, which is no other than Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Being submitted to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Or else, this need of ours, we will try to satisfy it through improper means. And that's so dangerous, because we're going to mention if that happens, unfortunately, then it will just grow stronger, the spiritual illness, to an extent that when we are exposed to it, we're not able to survive anymore. You see, in the Holy Quran, when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He gives an example of people that used to kill the prophets. He says, أَفَكُلَّمَا جَاءَكُمْ رَسُولٌ. Every time a prophet would come to you, بِمَا لَا تَهْوَى أَنفُسَكُمْ, and which went against, he had a message which went against that which you desired, فَاسْتَكْبَرْتُمْ, you became arrogant. فَفَرِيقٌ كَذَّبْتُمْ وَفَرِيقٌ تَقْتُلُونَ. A part of a group of you started to deny these prophets, another group started killing the prophets. Start killing the prophets. Takabbur is one of the worst spiritual illnesses. There's so many individuals that you can find in the Islamic history, if they deviated from the right path, it was because of takabbur. One of the reasons why we're sitting here today and we're considering these days as being days of sorrow is because of that as well.
Despite, he saw himself to be better than the daughter of Fatima. He said, I don't care if she's in the house, I'm going to burn it down. Was it not his words? He said, Fatima is in the house. What in? I don't care. This is exactly what happens. So what is the reason why we try to satisfy this need through its improper means? I'm going to mention 5 different reasons to why we satisfy this need through an improper means and how we are deviated. How satisfying our need for greatness the improper way, how we will become deviated. The first one, respected brothers and sisters, that is, we mistake in identifying the instance. We have a general rule, and what is that? We just mentioned it. Every human being seek greatness. They search for greatness, basically. Every human being. Nobody is exempted. It's something which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He planted in our fitrah. So we should make sure that we understand where this general rule, where it applies. Or else we're going to start to look for improper means. We think that suddenly we look at people on social media, we're like, oh, mashallah, this person has a lot of followers. That means that his amount of followers must be a mean or cause for greatness. So if I increase my followers, I will achieve greatness as well. Especially in today's age where you have this red pill, blue pill movement where they speak about, I don't know, being rich and wealthy. That will give you greatness. You will achieve greatness if you become rich, if you become wealthy. If you have big muscles, you will be great. They point towards the wrong things in life because of what? They don't understand where this general rule, where it applies. So the mistake in pointing out the instance where this general rule, where it applies, the particular situation where you should apply this general rule. Then we see, unfortunately, a lot of our youth, they're deviated because of such individuals. They lure our youth because they understand that, look, every human being have a desire for achieving greatness. They understand that. But they take advantage of it for their own benefit, for their own fame. Because they deviated themselves, they want everybody else to be deviated. And that's exactly what happens if we don't know what this general rule, where it applies. Second, we haste to achieve greatness. Sometimes we're in a hurry to achieve greatness. In contrast to what I mentioned before, that achieving greatness is a process. It happens gradually. Then we start to convince ourselves that, no, I achieved greatness, therefore I'm better than other individuals. Look what I achieved. Even though he has achieved nothing in this worldly life, he can consider himself to be a great person. Why? Because when a lie is repeated often, it becomes the truth. He convinced himself, no, I'm great. Look at me. I've achieved so much in this worldly life. Look at all these individuals, all these peasants around me, yeah? They achieved nothing in life. I'm the greatest. Because he hasted to achieve greatness, he didn't understand it's a process. It happens gradually. You should work, you should put effort into it. And you were supposed to become humble when you strive. Then you think, I'm great. I'm great. That's the second. Third reason for why our need for greatness or our search for greatness is deviated. What is that? We neglect the role in our search for greatness. The role of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, we neglect His role in our search for greatness. We don't connect the dots. We don't connect the dots. Every single achievement in this worldly life, the end goal should always be Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Respected brothers and sisters, if you are studying at a university, if it's not for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, then what are you doing then? Then it's to achieve greatness through improper means. Then when you achieve that, whether it's a PhD or something else, or title or social status because you have a good education, it turns to a spiritual illness. Why? Because you didn't do it for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. If Allah's role in our search for greatness is completely forgotten, then we start looking for worldly causes in this worldly life, and then we will be deviated. We think a social status, for example, authority, power, a title, a name, fame, these things become means for us to achieve greatness. In other words, they turn into spiritual illnesses. That's the worst danger. That's the worst danger. Therefore, we should always make sure that we can connect the dots. When you want to choose a spouse, if you're not married, Ask yourself, what is it I'm choosing this person for? Is it for the sake of Allah or not? It could be for the sake of other things as well. If Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentioned those things, but make sure that you connect the dots. So the end goal is always Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, or else you will be like a person who loses his destination. You're on a journey, you don't focus on the destination anymore. Then two or three, a couple of pleasures on your way, you're going to be distracted. You lose your destination. And when your time is up, you didn't reach your destination. And that's the sad part of it. Why it's important for us to strive and make sure we never neglect the role of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We always connect the dots. If I want to raise my children, in my interaction with my parents, is it for the sake of Allah or not? Work on your intentions. One of the most neglected concepts in Islam is the niyyah. We should work on our intentions, or else we forget the role of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in our search for greatness. Then we will just nurture this spiritual disease that resides within our heart, unfortunately. That's what we get. Fourth reason, that's something to do with the community and the society. And what is that? Sometimes when you look at the society, especially in this modern world, when they praise people or when they condemn people, they do it based on the wrong principles. So people, they start to believe that, look, I'm being praised because of my car, I'm being praised because of my looks, I'm being praised because of my title, my power, or my ability to speak, whatever it might be. I'm being praised for these things. In other words, they are means for me to achieve greatness. That's a lie. That's a lie. And sometimes people are condemned for the wrong things as well. They're condemned for the wrong things as well. Especially when it comes to our youth and our children. Be careful. Be careful. Do not praise children for achieving results. Praise them for their efforts and the sincerity. Don't praise the results. The results are not important. So what if they have a PhD, for example? If that PhD is turned into Ana Rabbuka al-A'la, just like Pharaoh, is that a positive thing? Of course not. If he becomes the mayor of a city, for example, don't achieve him for his success or his results. Don't praise him for that. Praise him for his efforts and sincerity. When our children, they do something, always praise their effort and their sincerity. Make sure to tell them, look, you do this for the sake of Allah. If you put an effort into it, it's a beautiful thing. Yeah. You strive for the sake of Allah. Then the results are not important for them anymore. Or else the perception of means to achieve greatness completely gets distorted. Then they think that, no, if I want to achieve greatness, it's only through results. This materialist mindset, we're the ones installing it in the minds of our children and youth. Why? Because we praise them for the wrong things. We condemn the wrong things. Especially in our society today, unfortunately. Have you seen how they praise people based on what principles? Unfortunately. Well, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He told you, no, being God conscious is something which you should praise. And that's not written on your forehead, is it? In other words, be careful of praising that as well. When you praise individuals, always for the sincerity and the efforts. Simple. When you condemn someone, make sure it's always aligned with the Islamic principles. Always. So that was the fourth one. The fifth one, that is sometimes we compare ourselves, but we compare ourselves to a fake standard. Irrational comparisons. That's one of the reasons why the need for achieving greatness gets deviated. How? We look at other individuals, we be like, they achieved so much in their life, I didn't. He has a nicer car, he has a nicer house, yeah? He has a better family, he doesn't have issues in his family. And then we compare ourselves with a fake standard. Why do I say it's a fake standard? Because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He made it quite clear in the Holy Quran, Inna akramakum indallah atqakum. The person who's most God conscious is the most noble person. And is taqwa written on your forehead? Can you measure it? No, you can't. In other words, don't compare yourself to a fake standard. Don't compare yourself to a fake standard. Don't look at people's material goods, their houses, their cars. Even when it comes to religion, them practicing the religion, mashallah, this guy, he's been going for Umrah for, 7 years in a row. He must be a very devout person. Even that is a fake comparison. Why? Because there was a companion of Imam Khadim alayhi salam. 53 times. There was a companion of Imam Kadhim alayhi salam, 53 times he went barefooted for Hajj. 53 times, barefooted. You know what the Imam, he said about this person before he passed away? La ghafarallahu lah. May Allah not forgive this person. You think he's going to go to paradise? You think 53 Hajj is going to help him now? When the Imam of his time says, may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala not forgive this person for what he committed of crimes, for what he did and how he deviated people. It's not written on your forehead. You can't measure God consciousness. Very important. So when I say it's irrational comparisons and you're comparing yourself to a fake standard, this is exactly what I mean. In other words, don't look towards other. Every single human have their own personal journey towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Don't compare yourself to anybody else. Compare yourself to yourself, how you were yesterday. That's what matters. Like Amir al-Mu'mineen beautifully states, he said a true believer, he doesn't have 2 days that are identical. They're always different. There's always some sort of an improvement. A true believer, 2 days of his are not identical. Always improvement. Always. Compare yourself to yourself. Who you were yesterday. Not to other people, not to fake standards out there. That's very important. So, when we understand this, we understand, if we want to sum it up, what arrogance is, that is basically a human inclination toward growth and greatness, which is misdirected. So it's a positive thing. The seed is positive. Why? That is exactly why we seek Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Because we desire absolute greatness. We desire the source of greatness. But unfortunately, we do it through improper means. So we deviate it, and it leads to what? A spiritual illness, which is the worst and the greatest of sins, which is called arrogance and takabbur. Arrogance and takabbur. Another important point which I would like to mention, that is, respected brothers and sisters, nobody is exempted when it comes to this spiritual illness. Nobody. Not one single person. Listen to Imam Ja'far as-Sadiq alayhi salam, what he says. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad mu'ajjal farajam. He says, Al-kibru qad yakunu fi shirar an-nas min kulli jins. That arrogance is to be found in every human being from every group. In the worst type of human beings in every group. So it's something which is universal. Nobody is exempted. But there's different categories of people that are in the danger zone. And we can't deny that either. We can't deny that. Why? Because there are certain categories of people, they're in the risk of deviating the need they have to achieve greatness, yeah? And look through improper means or seek towards improper means. The first category of people that are in the danger zone, respected brothers and sisters, that's wealthy people. Do I even have to explain why? He achieved some wealth. He has some money. He looked at people that doesn't have the same amount of money and he'd be like, I'm better than these individuals. That's the lowest stage and level of takabbur. That he considered himself to be better than other people because of what? Because of wealth. And in a materialistic world that we live in today, unfortunately, it's widespread. It's like it's a disease which is affecting every single country, unfortunately. Nobody's exempted. Even Muslim countries are affected by it. Because he's wealthy, he looks at his wealth, he looks at other people, they don't have the same wealth, and he considers, that's why wealthy people, they have a greater responsibility. Imam Ja'far as-Sadiq alayhi salam, Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. He says the virtue doesn't lie in attaining wealth. It's not important for you that you have wealth or that you're rich. It's what you use it for. If you sacrifice it for the sake of Allah or not. When I say sacrifice it for the sake of Allah, I'm not saying that you should sell your house and give it sadaqah. No. But you make use of every blessing you are blessed with from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for its right purpose. For its right purpose. And you've seen that. I've seen a scholar, I visited a scholar once, and he had a huge house. But downstairs was turned into a Hussainia. He said, every person that asked me to have a majlis, I never denied one single person to have a majlis here. I did waqf of this house. He said, Allah, He blessed me with a house so big, why shouldn't I use it for its right purpose? Give back to Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salam. They're the reason why I have this house. The money is not from me. I didn't create this money. I didn't create this wealth. Allah is the creator of it. He's the real cause. So wealthy people, they're in the danger zone. They should be careful. Second, petty people. People that feel some sort of inferior within their hearts. They feel that they're inferior. That's very dangerous. When you feel that you're inferior, sometimes you look for achieving greatness. You search for greatness through improper means. Why? Just to balance that feeling or the fact that you feel inferior, just to balance it out. That's why I always advise parents not to embarrass or humiliate your children in front of others. Why? That would nurture that spiritual illness in the future. Why? Because it nurtures their feeling of feeling inferior. Therefore, when they grow up, they become arrogant. Because they think that, look, I have to achieve greatness and I have to hurry up. Why? Because I feel inferior. It's so dangerous when we embarrass our children, we humiliate our children in front of others. But unfortunately, at the same time, it's quite widespread. We're the ones installing this inferior complex in our children, but we're not aware of it. Yeah? Every time our child commits a mistake, let's invite the whole family over, with the grandparents, their siblings, uncles, aunties, everybody. Bismillah, come everybody, my son committed a mistake. Right? We turn it into a show, for example, for the whole family. Just for them to hear that he committed a mistake. We embarrass him in front of the whole family. If you want to correct your child, make sure that you do it in private, always. So they feel that their reputation, their dignity as children is preserved. They deserve respect as well. Imam Zayn al-Abidin alayhi salam, Risalat al-Huquq. He explicitly mentions it. It is the duty of parents to honor their children, to respect their children. Why? Because it's a manna from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You didn't create your children. It's a manna from Allah. How do you treat the amana from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? Not to speak of in the huquq where he speaks about the rights of the Muslim in the community, he says that you should consider every child in your community, you should consider it to be your own child. Now do you think he's telling us, he's preaching something but the 12th Imam, he doesn't consider the children of our community as his own children? Of course he does. In other words, the 12th Imam, he considers our children to be his own. In other words, it's the amana. Imagine the Imam Mahdi came and he's like, these are my children, take care of them. Your children, that's your children. It's amana from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It's the amana of the 12th Imam. They're his followers before they are your children. Make sure not to embarrass them, not install this inferior complex within them. Unfortunately, a lot of arrogant people today, you see that if their need or search for greatness is deviated, it happened in their childhood. Because they were embarrassed all the time, they were humiliated all the time, either by their parents or people around them. Today they're arrogant, unfortunately. And that's what you get. That's what you get. In a beautiful narration, it is stated, ما من رجل تكبر أو تجبر إلا لذلة يجدها في نفسه. There's no person that shows arrogance in his behavior except that he feels inferior within himself. So it goes back to him feeling inferior. Why it's dangerous. Third group of people that are in the danger zone to become arrogant. People with a social status or authority. That's dangerous. That's dangerous. Sayyid Ali Khamenei, in a beautiful meeting with the officials, they thought that he was about to give them advice on how to administrate things. He said, now when you become officials and the people, they relied on you, make sure that you lengthen your Salatul Layl. Lengthen your Salatul Layl. Why? Because may God forbid that power and that authority, you consider that to be something that is a cause of greatness or source of greatness for yourself. No, it all depends on how you use it. Or else Pharaoh had more authority than you have. It all goes back to what you use it for. What's the purpose? What's the end goal? And whether you sacrifice with a sincere intention or not. People with power, they should be careful as well. And it's sufficient for people with power and social status to be arrogant by the fact that they just jump to conclusions and make decisions without assessing the situation. In other words, they just jump to conclusions. That itself is sufficient for a person in power to be considered arrogant. Why? Because if he had knowledge, or if he was a humble person, he would at least try to look for, hear different sides out before jumping to conclusion, this, that. Before making a decision, he would seek advice from people around him, yeah? He would counsel, he would do certain stuff just to seek knowledge in order for his decision to be based on the right principles. In other words, if a person who's in power or has a social status, you just keep jumping to conclusions, that in itself is a sign of him being an arrogant person. Just as the narration mentions, إِذَا تَفَقَّحَ الرَّفِيعَ تَوَادَعَ. If a noble person, he gains knowledge, tawada', he becomes a humble person. He becomes a humble person. So why is it this person in power, this person with a social status, he's just jumping to conclusions all the time? He's not a humble person. That's why he does it. He's not a humble person. So social status is not only related to worldly material goods. No, sometimes it's because of the social status comes from religious arrogance, which is a concept as well, unfortunately. A person, he achieves some sort of a status in the society or community because of his acts of worship, because of him being a servant of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, because of always standing on the front row for Salatul Jama'ah. I'm not saying you shouldn't tomorrow and be scared of doing it. But if you search for greatness through your acts of worship and not the existence that you are worshipping, then unfortunately it will be turned into a spiritual disease instead of being humble. Instead of being humble. And that is dangerous as well. As we mentioned the first night, there were certain individuals that considered themselves to be so religious that they thought to themselves, I'm better than the Imam of my time. You know how many people that tried to advise Imam Hussainia before he went to Karbala? You were supposed to join the Imam of your time. Now you're sitting here giving him advice. Who are you? You should be ashamed of yourself. No, don't go, do this, do that. Who are you? Sayyid al-Shabab Ahl al-Jannah. You want to give him advice? Who are you? Look at the arrogance, what it does to a person. Unfortunately. May God forbid the 12th Imam, he comes and now instead of just obeying him and being loyal soldiers to him, we're just going to be like, no, let me give you an advice. You need to listen to me. Unfortunately, that's what happens. You don't believe me? We have a narration which is very scary that says that when the 12th Imam, he comes, there will be people that claim to follow him, yeah? And they will use verses of the Holy Quran to argue against him. To argue against him. This is the walking and talking Quran. Walking and talking Quran. You want to use the quiet Quran to speak against the Imam of your time? What is that? Arrogance. Arrogance. And it's a religious one. Why? They're not using scientific methods or this, that, scientific arguments against them. Religious arguments, the Holy Quran. The Holy Quran. They're using it against the Imam of their time. So understand that being a true believer or religious person should always foster humility and being humble. And if that doesn't happen when we do something, let's say we worship Allah, we recite a dua, if we don't feel more dependent on Allah after that dua or after that prayer, that means that we've feeded this spiritual illness which is called takabbur. You should always be careful of that. Hence the beautiful narration states, فَلَوْ رَخَصَ اللَّهُ فِي الْكِبْرِ. If Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He allowed kibr لِأَحَدٍ مِّنْ عِبَادِهِ, for some of His servants, لَرَخَصَّهُ فِي خَاصَّةِ أَنْبِيَائِهِ وَمَلَائِكَتِهِ. Then He would allow it for the chosen one amongst His prophets and angels. They're more entitled to be arrogant if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He allowed it. But then He continued, وَلَكِنَّهُ سُبْحَانَهَا كَرَّحَ إِلَيْهُمُ الْتَكَبُّرِ وَرَضِيَ لَهُمُ التَّوَاضُعِ. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He despises arrogance for them. He finds it repulsive that they should be arrogant. But He approved of them being humble. And you see that Imagine being a great person like Amir al-Mu'mineen alayhi salam. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad. The Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa alayhi, he promised you paradise. You were the one who got rid of the gate of Khaybar. Yeah? You were the one at Yawm al-Khandaq, you saved Islam. And the Prophet told you that as well. This is Ali ibn Abi Talib. But at the same time, what was his laqab? Abu Taraf. Sleeping on the ground. The whole world was telling this man that he was great. But he considered himself to be a servant of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Look what true iman and faith does to a person. Despite the whole world, angels, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala telling you how great you are. Ali ma'al Quran, Quran ma'al Ali. Yeah? Yet, you don't let it get to your head. Why? Because Amir al-Mu'mineen alayhi salam, he never sought improper means to search for in his search for greatness. Always the right means. He understood that, look, all these things are not means to seek greatness. I don't care about the creation. I'm looking for the creator. I'm not satisfied with the shadow. I want the existence. This is Amir al-Mu'mineen alayhi salam. The Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa alayhi, the same. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad. The best of creation, Salama, she came into the room and she saw that he was shedding tears and crying in qunut. And he was shaking while he was standing in prayer. The best of creation. The best of creation. And he recited this beautiful dua. Ilahi la takilli ila nafsi tarfat aini abada. Do not leave me to myself even for the blink of an eye. Imagine the angels of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala speaking to you every single day. You're the chosen one, the best of all prophets that walk on this earth. And this is your dua. Do not leave me to myself even for a blink of an eye. How beautiful it was. And the daughter of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, the same. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. She was told that she will be the leader of the women in paradise. Sayyid an-Nisa al-Alamin. Yet when she was standing in prayer, she was shaking as well. وَيَتَفَكَّرُونَ فِي خَلْقِ السَّمَوَاتِ وَالْأَرْضِ. This verse from the Holy Quran is revealed. The sha'n and nuzul of it is Fatimiyyah al-Zahra while she was standing in prayer. She was contemplating upon the creation of the skies and the earth, the heavens and earth. رَبَّنَا لَا أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. So beautiful. سُبْحَانَكَ فَقِنَا عَذَابَ النَّارِ. She was contemplating upon the creation of the heavens and the earth. And then she said, all praise be to you, Ya Allah. Save us from the hellfire. Imagine a woman who knew for sure that she's going to enter paradise. You were promised by the Messenger of Allah. Yet she was so humble, so humble. She was so humble that unfortunately there were people in Medina that took advantage of it. Ali ibn Abi Talib alayhi salam, he was so humble that people, they saw that they thought to themselves, it must be a weakness, Ali is weak. They don't understand Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He gave Ali ibn Abi Talib a command through his messenger that Ali, you need to have patience. Ali, you need to have patience. I know what's going to happen to you after I pass away. But for the sake of my ummah, have patience. These people, they thought Ali being humble is a weakness, unfortunately. After Lady Fatima salamullah alayha, she made a will. And then she said, Ya Ali, make sure to wash me for my burial, but do not remove my garments. Allahu alim, but maybe one of the reasons why she didn't want Ali ibn Abi Talib to remove the garment was not to see the bruises on her body. Maybe it was because he didn't want Ali ibn Abi Talib to see the broken rib. She instructed him to perform the ghusl over her clothes and bury her at night. Amir al-Mu'mineen alayhi salam, he said, I began to wash her and followed her instructions. Then suddenly those present saw Ali stop his work and cry out. Ali alayhi salam, he couldn't take it. He couldn't take it. Imam Ali alayhi salam, he performed and finished the ghusl. He showered Lady Zahra salamullah alayha.
But when he was about to tie the knots on her shroud, he called Zainab and Kulthum. And then Hassan and Hussein say, come. And he said, come, take farewell provisions from your mother. Today is the day of parting. Hassan and Hussein threw themselves upon their mother's body, weeping and crying, Ya Aba Abdullah. At least Ali alayhi salam was present. Your brother Hassan was present. But who was present when you were left in the desert and the plains of Karbala? Amir al-Mu'mineen alayhi salam, suddenly he heard the sound of Zahra salamullah alayha weeping under the shrouds. Maybe it's because she knew that next time I'll see my Hussein will be in Karbala. Ali alayhi salam, he embraced Imam Hassan and Hussein alayhi salam tightly to his chest, confident again. Then a voice called out, Ali, take the children away. Ali, take the children away, for even the angels in the heavens were weeping. Imam Ali alayhi salam calmed Hassan and Hussein alayhi salam, said his final farewell to them and proceeded with the burial. When Imam Hussein alayhi salam, he was in Karbala and he was left alone, the narration states that they saw his back was bent when he reached the Alqamah. But was it because of the broken ribs of Fatima or the broken head of Abu al-Fadl Abbas? According to a narration, it is said that once al-Baneen, she entered the room and she saw Abu al-Fadl Abbas sitting in the room. He was hitting the floor. Say, Yabni, my son, what happened? Why is it that you're angry? He turned around, he said, no, mother, why is it that every time I'm walking in the alleys of Medina with Imam Hassan, he falls to the ground? What is it my brother witnessed in these alleys since he falling to the ground or every time we are walking in Medina? ألا لعنة الله على قوم الظالمين وصلى الله على محمد وآله الطيبين الطاهرين.